Hey there, Chelsea J here. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to tune into this series that highlights talented professionals across the world who have experienced toxic work environments and escaped them. Today, I get to talk with Jess, and she is currently a graduate student who has worked in a variety of industries, and she's also been a manager herself. So, she is going to offer some great perspective on how you can protect your employees, communicate with them whenever you are working in a toxic environment as a leader. And we talk about some stigmas and how to overcome those as well. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. So, let's go ahead and get into it. Oh, Jess, I am so happy that I get to talk to you today. And I just want to share my appreciation with you for being brave and for showing up to sit here and speak with me today. I just want to say thank you.
Of course, honestly, I'm just glad to have the opportunity.
Yes. And speaking of having the opportunity, can you share with our viewers why you said yes to coming on and sharing your story?
Well, it's definitely been an interesting year. And one thing that you may not know, this is not my first toxic workplace. I have different
Mm,
experiences and different types. But this year, I did realize that I became disabled through autoimmune diseases. And I realized
mhm.
that I can't tolerate the same toxic workplaces because now it was affecting not just my mental health, but my physical health
Mhm.
as well. So that kind of
Wow.
made me have to look at a lot of the behaviors I had been tolerating and really
Mhm.
ask myself, why am I tolerating this? Is it even benefiting the person who is inflicting this kind of toxic behavior?
Wow. That's really powerful. And I'm so sorry that you've gone through that. And you said you've worked in several different toxic work environments. Now, would you mind explaining if they were all in the same industry or if they were in different industries?
Different industries.
Wow.
And one of them, I was a supervisor. And that's what made it really hard, is because the people who I answered to, I didn't agree with.
Mhm.
But when you understand a business, you can understand maybe the tough situation people are in when making decisions. But I
Mhm.
also had to represent the people who answered to me. And
Yes.
being the middle person, I found that both parties were not on the same page at all. And if you
Mhm.
can't get people to understand perspectives, it's really hard to make a difference.
Absolutely. And thinking back to maybe one or two of the environments that you were in, when did you realize it was toxic? Was it a moment? Was it a buildup of things? What was it for you?
It's a mixture. It's mostly, I think, a buildup. I think once you
Okay.
have that one moment, it
Mhm.
becomes easier to look back and say, actually, this has been going on for some time.
Yes. And were there any moments that stuck out to you? Like, can you provide any examples of any situations?
When I was a supervisor, I had a lot of great experiences. So, despite any negatives, I still got a lot of
Mhm.
positives out of it, which I think
Okay.
comes down to a mindset. But
Mhm.
there was one time I was interviewing, and I was not the only
Mhm.
interviewer. And the woman just would not acknowledge my presence. And she made it very clear by the end it was because she did not like my age. I was younger than her.
Wow.
But unfortunately, the person I was interviewing with, we got along
Mhm.
great and I love working with her, but she did
Mhm.
not feel comfortable addressing it and ended up enabling it.
Okay.
So I was able to have a honest conversation at the end of the interview and let her know that it
Mhm.
really hurt me because I felt like
Mhm.
this place I call home, I'm supposed to love working here, and I felt completely unwelcomed.
Mhm.
And even though we had a great, meaningful conversation out of it, it kind of forced me to open my eyes and say, why do I not feel comfortable at my own work?
Right. How did she take that conversation? Was she open? Was she receptive to it?
Very open and receptive. So that definitely helped. But I think that's also part of the problem is it's good when people are open and receptive, but
Mhm.
I didn't see actions moving forward to support their words. And it could be they don't know what actions to take. But
Right.
one thing that I've learned through many different types of jobs is
Mhm.
you have to be able to adapt. And if you don't know what to do, you have to figure out where to go to figure any of it out, really. You have to start somewhere.
Absolutely. And it's always interesting being a manager in a toxic work environment, right? So I want to ask you, did your employees feel the toxic environment and what did you do to kind of try to shield them from it? And were you able to?
Some of them did ask to have one-on-one meetings with me, and they were
Mhm.
productive. I felt they were productive because I got people to be
Mhm.
very open and honest about things.
Mhm.
However, it ended up creating one of two things. Either they ended up
Mhm.
contributing to the toxicity because they became
Mhm.
unsatisfied with their jobs and they thought, well, why am I
Okay.
working so hard? Which is understandable.
Right.
Or they started to understand my perspective, but sometimes that's not good either because they think, well, what can I do to
Mhm.
help? And if I don't
Mhm.
know what they can do, then they start to feel lost.
Yes. Absolutely. And as now that you're no longer in that management role, as you reflect on everything that took place and the actions you took as well, is there anything you would do different, or what would you recommend managers do when they're in a toxic work environment?
I would definitely say outside resources because
Mhm.
I've worked in libraries and I've worked in museums,
Mhm.
and collaboration is something you need to be able to do that because departments
Mhm.
depend on each other.
Yes.
And that creates a lot of soft skills. But
Mhm.
the other thing is, it really opens the door to get more communication, and you start to understand that it's never one problem, it's a bunch of little things that have just been left unaddressed.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. So I like that you said that. And before entering these toxic work environments, I'm curious if there were any red flags for you during the interview process or the hiring process that you noticed but looked over and moved forward.
Yes. And I do have to say it's 100% on me because I feel
Mhm.
like when you're looking for a job, it's really easy to ignore red flags.
Yes.
My most recent was obvious, and that was through
Mhm.
the interviewing process. It just didn't seem
Mm.
like there was a lot of effort put in to actually make me want the job.
Mhm.
And they were definitely depending on the fact that they wanted someone who was looking for a job.
Okay.
For my
That's good that you
supervisor
said that.
one, though, it was interesting because I started there part-time during the pandemic and
Mhm.
they kept giving me more responsibilities. It was great to be appreciated. And
Mhm.
when someone retired, I was asked to apply because they liked my skills.
Okay.
So that I wouldn't say was a red flag, but I
Mhm.
did know of pre-existing issues in management beforehand.
Did you? So
I
what
did.
made you say yes?
Talking to the people I would be answering to, there was a
Mhm.
lot of great conversations about all the changes that could be made. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, it was one of those things they could not. I'm going to be a little bit kind in their perspective. I don't think they could
Mhm.
match my pace.
Okay.
And there was acknowledgement of that. And I was willing to
Mhm.
slow down and take baby steps. But once again, it came down to a lot of things were said, but there weren't a lot of actions to support them.
Mm. They couldn't keep their word and stick
Yes.
behind what they promised,
Yes.
which is always unfortunate. And it's always interesting to me how, and I talk to a lot of professionals that go through the same thing. They see red flags or something feels unsettling to them, but they still move forward with it. So I definitely believe that you need to trust your gut. And that first impression that you get, you need to pay attention to it.
Absolutely. And I think it's hard now because on LinkedIn, you see a lot of people posting about how hard the job search is once they're unemployed. But I
Right.
do think that, and I believe you've even posted about it, others have
Mhm.
posted, when you accept a job offer, it's not just about you trying to impress the other. They should be trying to impress you so that way, you want to join their team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I always like to say, you need to choose your hard. Yes, the job search can be hard, but working in a toxic environment is also hard because there are long term effects that you will have to live with. So choose which hard that you want to go with. Now, I'm curious, once you were in these situations, how long did you stay? And what gave you the courage to finally leave?
Both of them, I was in the position, or at least with the company, for a year.
Okay.
Most of the time, it's tough to describe that. So I was with them for a year. I knew that I wasn't going to stay there, especially as I work on my degree online. I
Mm-hmm.
guess my biggest fault is I'm a hopeful person. I like to think of, can I make a difference? Or even if I can't make the changes, can I be the first steps in changes?
Mm-hmm.
Going back to your point, what are you giving in exchange for that? If it's your health and your happiness, then that's too much of a trade.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. Oh, and there's so much that you said there. So I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it there. So for anyone who is currently in a toxic work environment, what advice would you give them?
I would definitely say you need to consider everything in your life. For me, one of the reasons I stayed as long as I did really comes down to it being able to afford bills. I
Hmm.
have student loans like many people and other bills,
Yes.
and I feel like responsibilities are probably the number one reason people stay. So
Hmm.
if you feel you have to stay, definitely having a point by this time of this year, I would like to have other options to choose from.
Hmm.
And if you don't have to stay, then don't at all. And once you're out of there, find things to keep yourself occupied and happy.
Absolutely. And I want to call out something else that you brought up whenever you mentioned how long you stayed at some of these organizations. You said a year. Were you ever afraid of not being able to find another job or the stigma of looking like a job hopper? Did that ever cross your mind? And was that really the case?
Well, I do look like a job hopper, at least that's what I've been told. But
Hmm.
honestly, I have no problem with that because I
Hmm.
know if I don't stick with a job, it's because it's no longer benefiting me. I'm not growing
Yes.
professionally or any of the other things I need. In terms of, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question again?
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to know if that was really the case because I've seen often people are worried about, oh, if I stay at this job for under a year, I won't be able to get another one. But in your case, you were able to get other ones. And I just want people to see that you will always have options. So you don't have to stay in a
I got
toxic
very
situation.
lucky because I'm in
Hmm.
a part of Connecticut where, unless you're in the health industry or you're part of
Hmm.
D or Pfizer, it's really hard to get a job. It's basically
Hmm.
McDonald's or Wendy's.
Okay.
I think that's also why I ended up going from one to the other so easily, is because I was
Hmm.
excited to find something relevant to me.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, you might look like a job hopper, but it's one of those things. Every day I was there, once you realize you're in a toxic work environment, it feels like
Hmm.
you're there much longer.
Yes. Absolutely. And when you were going through these toxic environments, did you have a support system? Who did you talk to get all of this off your chest?
Unfortunately, I don't have a support system. That's been the hardest part.
Mm,
So that's where I did go. I don't do things online a lot, but I did use LinkedIn
mm-hmm,
because there are a lot of people like yourself who are
mm-hmm,
talking about their experiences or they're talking about methods that are just helpful in all aspects, professionally or
mm-hmm.
personally. So I do think if you have family or friends to talk to, that's great. You have
Mm-hmm.
colleagues to talk to, that's even better. But even if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have something, you can always find either someone online. There's different
Yes.
books now that address different techniques for handling all sorts of situations.
And I love that you were proactive about, because the thing about LinkedIn is, and you know this, you can curate your feed to see what you need to see. So if you need encouragement or job search tips, like you said, you can connect with professionals who offer that or connect with professionals who give those doses of encouragement and motivation. So I love that you were proactive about that. So definitely grateful. Now that you are out of those toxic work environments, I'd love to know, how's life on the other side?
Life is good, despite still looking for work. Like I said, I'm doing my classes online, and honestly, that it doesn't even feel like work. It's just a great
Mm-hmm.
time and I enjoy it. I'm also taking the time to do a lot of things that I didn't have the time to do before because either
Mm-hmm.
not just work, but I realized when I got home from work, I felt a lot more fatigue and I was a lot
Mm,
less inspired to do these things because I just was
yeah.
so.
I love that you're taking this time for you and you've made it to the other side and you're practicing self-care and doing things that you enjoy. And that is key because I know that it lifts a huge weight off of your shoulders. And I know your next opportunity will be incredible and they will be so lucky to have you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yes. Do you have any final thoughts or anything else that you want to share for anyone listening today?
Honestly, I could probably think of a million things, but the one thing that I would say is the reason I'm focusing on myself is it just makes sense. I mean, if you spend all this time worrying about the business or your coworkers or the
Mhm.
circumstances, you're not thinking about your needs or even your wants. So I do think that whether you go from one job or another, or you take the time to yourself, you have to kind of take some time for self love to just appreciate what you've done, what you can do, and what you're going to do next.
That was beautifully said, Jess. And again, I want to thank you for taking time out to share your experience and provide encouragement for everyone who is listening. So, again, I appreciate you for being part of this series.
Absolutely. And thank you for this. I honestly think when you put this as an opportunity online, it was just perfect timing.
I'm so grateful. And we met through LinkedIn. So it shows you the power of LinkedIn and how you can align with the people who you want to align with. So thank you so much. And if you don't mind, I'll make sure to link your profile below so other professionals can connect with you on LinkedIn.
It sounds perfect. Thank you.
Wonderful. Hey there, Chelsea J again. I hope that you enjoyed that conversation that I just had with Jess, and I hope you took a lot from it. I know one of my big takeaways from our conversation is really focusing on your mental, emotional, and physical health and prioritizing that above money, above anything. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have your mental and physical and emotional well being, well, what do you have? I love that we also highlighted that stigma of having to stay somewhere for a year just shows you can get another job. That's not a problem at all. So I absolutely love that she said that. And another big thing for me was finding a support system when you don't necessarily have close family and friends, but kind of building your community online. Because after all, that's how we connected. And I just love that she took initiative to do that. And I want to encourage you to do the same. All right, thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear about the lessons that you learned from our chat, so please feel free to like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Thank you so much.